Why do people want a product Apple will never make?
Welcome to All Future, where we talk all things Apple, tech, AI, various things throughout the week. If you've subscribed to this channel, we really appreciate it. If you haven't and are enjoying these videos, consider hitting that subscribe, giving us some support. We really appreciate it, and it's been really fun doing this, talking about all these different topics and such. And today,
It's my favorite part of the week.
Yeah?
It's my favorite part of the week
Yes.
talking about this. I love talking about this stuff. And I think we broke 6,000 subscribers. I try
Sweet.
not to like obsessively follow the number,
Uh-huh.
but I saw that little notification thing pop up. I was like, nice.
Nice.
So welcome, all 6,000 of you guys.
Yes, thank you very much. Today, we're talking about smartphones and kind of the antithesis of them, which is now becoming dumb phones, which are becoming a lot more popular. And it's part of it is just kind of a natural thing where things are going to swing all the way back when they swing all the way one way. And it's really interesting to look into all the dumb phones that are coming out and then consider if Apple would try to get into this space. So essentially, the idea of a dumb phone is just going back to older phones. Some of them are even kind of looking like smartphones, but then they just have much more limited functionality. And yeah, what is your first impression of a dumb phone, Matt?
Well, I got a lot of thoughts on this, I guess. First off, where's this even? Why are there articles about this? You know, I mean, we're looking. There's like a New York Times article and stuff. We have this reference here. Some other articles from different sites. People are talking about this, and I think because there is an actual need from the consumer side or a desire from some people to want to detach from what the smartphone has become, which is a addictive device, a device that has, while improved the world in many ways, has also had some negative effects. And I think people are realizing they're like, I don't know if this is good for me, you know? And so there's this kind of swing, like you're saying, that pendulum swing back. So people are interested in, well, is there a way we can kind of get back to our whatever Nokia 5100 phones or whatever we had before, while still having some of the features from the smartphone? So it's this constant balancing act. So I think there is a desire out there for this in a certain sector.
Yeah.
I think the problem is that we've already done a direct A/B test of this in the market, and it happened around 2015, 2012, something, when literally everyone was on smartphones by then. Like the dumb phone market crash. These products have already gone head to head against each other, and smartphones, despite being vastly more expensive, are the things that won.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like I think it's going to be hard for any of these companies to break into this space. And one of the cooler ones, Light Phone, which is kind of has an e-ink screen, seems really neat. This seems like something, I could kind of see myself wanting to kind of use this thing. But the problem is you're just going to keep hitting roadblocks in your life because of how ubiquitous the smartphone infrastructure has become.
Yeah.
You know, there's still places where you can't see the menu without scanning the QR code now, even post-pandemic, right? Like how many places are...
I was at a place last night.
There you
and
go.
and like terrible cell signal in there, so I had to
of
like
course.
wait 30
Of
seconds.
course, none of these places. This will be in a basement bar. And
Yeah.
So
No consideration.
exactly right. So, and I mean, I just think the tapping for metro and mass transit systems, tap to pay kind of systems. There are so many things that are built around smartphone infrastructure that it's going to be very difficult for us to go back.
Yeah, and it's gotten so far on that line too, down that line, that traveling with someone who has a dumb phone might be like frustrating. Like, oh, you have to go to the counter to go print a boarding pass, and you have to. We're at the metro. You're gonna have to stop over here to go get this. Oh, they only take Apple Pay and digital forms of payment. So, what are we gonna do?
For sure, there's so many problems with this. So I think some of these devices seem really cool to me. Like I get when you look at this Light Phone thing, it gives you that little, I call it like the gadget envy tingle or something, right? Like you see something that seems well designed, it seems cool, and you're like, oh, that's neat, right?
It's kind of like a nostalgia thing. It's
Right,
like, oh, this feels like an old
this seems
thing.
cool. Like I like the ink display, but the problem is very quickly you're going to be like, I need a real phone.
Yeah.
Right. And going to the Apple side of it, if Apple is going to consider making this, and it almost it dovetails slightly with the idea of Apple making the foldable phone kind of concept, because a lot of people associate kind of the flip phones with dumb phones and things like that. I don't think Apple is even thinking about this path at all because Apple already makes a dumb phone. They just call it the Apple Watch, right? Like if you think, what are people going for with these devices? Oh, I don't want to be sucked into checking TikTok or Instagram or whatever, falling into some kind of time sink hole with this device. Well, if you don't want to do that sort of thing, just wear a watch, right? Like if you have the cellular plan on your watch, you can do all the things you were just talking about, all the tap stuff, the boarding pass stuff, to kind of, still navigate in the digital world, but without a big screen that's going to lend itself to these distractions. So I think that's Apple's plan for the people who want this type of thing. Is just buy an Apple Watch.
So you could do that, like if you have an LTE Apple Watch, or I guess, is it 5G or is it still LTE?
You stumped me. You guys look it up.
But if it's not actually connected to a phone, you can do payment and everything.
Yeah. You can
Boarding
be
passes.
just with your watch.
That's
like
great.
You can, and I know plenty of people who do this. You see this very common in kind of running gym culture kind of people. They'll leave your phone locked up in your car while you do a 5K run, like what you just did, right? So if you're actually doing that 5K every day and you still want to make sure you're getting notifications and doing all this kind of stuff, the watch works great for that sort of thing.
That's pretty nice.
So I think that's Apple's answer to this. And and then the other problem is, again, it's what the market actually wants, and it seems to be pushing the other direction. They want more kind of things, more advanced things, and especially I think in Apple's mind, that's kind of what they're going for. Apple's most recent product, the Vision Pro, is so far opposite direction of a dumb device, right? It's the most smart device they've ever made, and I mean, you just traveled, right? Wore it on an airplane,
I
right?
did, yeah.
Yeah, like could you see yourself just with a dumb phone on a 6-hour cross country flight? Like having that Vision Pro is probably pretty cool, right?
It was very nice. Yeah, there's problems with it, especially since it's so new, and it was really interesting to experience the whole thing. So first, you have to put travel mode on, and if you don't put that on, like it freaks out immediately, and then it will prompt you to turn it on. But I got in this cycle where it wasn't prompting me properly, and we were taxiing, and so it was
all
constantly,
the images are
yeah. And then it would like reset, and then it's like the menu's here, and then all of a sudden it's moving, and then it's past me, and then it's like says tracking failed, which was really interesting. I was trying like so hard to catch it, but I was finally able to do it once we stopped before actually taking off, which was interesting. I think in the air it's easier, but yeah. Anyways, that was
this is really interesting.
Yeah.
So like when it's doing it, because I've seen like when people try to use it in a car, it doesn't like actually pin to things. But I thought that was because it is seen outside the windows, so it knows you're in motion. But you're saying like you're taxiing. It seems like its relative motion should be stationary if you're only looking inside the aircraft.
It's like I'm looking at a seat right there.
Yeah, but it still was like, oh, we're moving. So it's still whatever its kind of sensors were still detecting its motion.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't let it activate.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting in that regard. And then
Wild.
I never,
you're just like midair, and that kicks all of a sudden your windows just 500 miles an hour like shoot behind you.
yeah, I guess that's what would happen. I'm not entirely sure. But that was interesting. I could definitely see people getting motion sick. I didn't. I had maybe like a 1% of feeling motion sick, but I could see it happening for some people because, the plane is moving so much, and then you're having that whole thing and the windows adjusting. But it was really interesting, and then interesting seeing people's reactions, which was something you kind of predicted. People next to me, one guy was like, oh, you got all the devices or something. And then he asked me a few questions. And then like the flight attendant, I was traveling with other people that were seated a few rows ahead of me, and apparently they were like talking about me. And said something like, oh, yeah, you can't even see us. And I'm like, I actually can, totally. I just go into transparency and I can see everyone. But they don't really know that, So they're not a ubiquitous device that people understand yet. Yeah. So they have no clue what I'm seeing at all. And so I would end up taking it off quite a bit. And there's kind of a lot of interruptions in a flight.
Sure, yeah.
So that was the one thing that's different versus if I had an iPad, I just keep it playing and then I look at the flight attendant. For this, I would just take it off and look at them.
And you're doing that more for like the social cues of it all. But I could see that's actually the kind of cool benefit of this and the pass through, right? Is that you don't have to like accidentally miss a meal or something because you're watching a movie and you're so engrossed, right? The flight attendant comes up, it should detect someone is close and you see right, and
Yeah.
the pass-through should engage, but they'll probably be like, sir, you
Yeah.
know, like they won't know that you can see them.
Yeah, and
I
I don't
get-
want to be that guy. Like,
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
like,
yeah.
sir. and
Yeah,
then
yeah. You
everyone's
kind of
looking
want to
at me.
be polite, but that is, yeah. I didn't even think about that, but that's kind of cool. That's a kind of a cool part of it that as these devices become more ubiquitous, that like you don't have to take it off, and
Mm-hmm.
people realize, oh no, dude, I can see you. like, yeah. So
Yeah.
that's cool. That's cool, and yeah. So that's what I'm saying, right? Like this seems like pretty cool stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's so much great stuff with the smartphone tech for what it, and this is, I would count this as an evolution of that technology, right? You can kind of
Yeah.
draw a line between the invention of the iPhone to the Vision Pro that I get people's desire to go back on certain things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I'm very much a Luddite when it comes to some tech, and I'm like, you know, like yeah, like I want to draw with a pencil, like on a
Mm-hmm.
paper, and I want to like do, you know, but at the same time, this stuff is cool. Like this stuff is helpful.
Yeah.
We can't just abandon it and go back now.
Mm-hmm. I will say it was a completely different flying experience. There are those interruptions, but I watched the movie 12 Monkeys fully in the Apple theater, and it was different. Time passed, like the flight passed differently because I was completely absorbed, and even being a little uncomfortable in my seat didn't feel the same because I'm not like looking down at an iPad or like at a certain angle. I could literally any position I adjust and want to sit in my seat, I can just move the window to exactly my eye line.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's neat about it. And then what you're saying, right? I think there's probably like some kind of things happening mentally there because you see that same interface at home, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're using it at home and in the Apple Theater mode. So even though you're flying and in a probably one of the most uncomfortable things people can do, these long flights in economy class, right? It's terrible, but you're what you're seeing is what you're used to seeing at home on the couch. So your brain is not even associating it with, oh, I'm stuck on this terrible airplane. It's like, oh, we're watching a movie like we always do. You know,
Yeah.
it's just like you kind of fall into it. And yeah, like not having to see the distractions around you, and then even just having easier access to things, you know, like people like set up like their laptop on the tray or something like that.
Yeah.
Like you got to figure out how to like navigate getting your meal onto that tray with your
Mm-hmm.
devices and stuff, and having all that up off of it onto your face. A huge benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. I used it and was totally like eating and drinking with it on. No
Badass.
problem.
That's
yeah.
super cool. So forget dumb phones. This video premise has gone the opposite way. Get the most smart thing you can get, a Vision Pro.
What I do find funny about things like the light phone though
Yeah.
is the fact that it says it's, for calls and texts only,
Mm-hmm.
which I totally get. But then it's like there's all these extra functions and the list is like getting kind of long to the point there's an alarm, timer, calculator, directions, music player, notes, calendar, and podcasts, which all still seem kind of dumb and basic, but it's like, aren't we just adding apps and everything?
Mm-hmm.
So I think kind of the better implementation is what some people do. I think my brother might do this on like certain focus modes where you just have it become a dumb phone. And you could even do the screen filter to where it's black
Yeah.
and white so you're not as enticed for certain things.
Mm-hmm.
I think that might be a good implementation because then you get full functionality when you need it. And then when you want it off, then you can do that.
I have become a believer in focus modes. Like it took me
Yeah.
a while to get on board with them, but yeah, like I have like, would have different modes depending on what I'm doing. And what you find is that you kind of have like a muscle memory for if you're bored or you're waiting for something, like I'd say I'm waiting for a video to export or something, whatever. I'll pull up my phone and I know where the Instagram button is or the Reddit button. And I kind of just do it and I'm just mindlessly looking at it. But if that's not even there and I have to do one more step to even get to that app, I have to switch the focus mode. I'm like, oh, it kind of takes me out of that trance. And I'm like, oh, like I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to do something else. So yeah, I think there's already kind of better solutions for this than completely going cold turkey and getting
Yeah.
one of these devices. It seems neat though. I'm almost like was tempted to see what the return window is on this thing. And I was like, well, let me
try
get
it.
it and try it for a week. But the problem is though, it's actually harder to try these things now that we've switched to eSIMs in some ways. You used to be able to just pull a SIM card out and throw it into any phone. And if it was unlocked, it would just, your number was on there, it would just start working, right? Like it'd be fine. But now it's like with eSIM, it's like it's a whole thing to like switch and move the numbers, and you worry about it breaking, and losing your number somehow or something. So like this seems really cool. If anyone out there has one, let us know. I seriously doubt anyone who's like
Who's
into
watching
like
this.
tech kind of YouTube podcast
Yeah.
stuff is into these things. But maybe people who are like oh, I love tech, but realize my need to separate from it. Cool. Like I think it's
Yeah.
a neat thing to have. I'm glad it's out there. I don't see it catching on.
Yeah. The other benefit with them and things like the light phone, I don't know the light phone specifically though, is some of them can get down to like $20 or like $50. Very cheap, and then also super long lasting battery, which used to be the case. Didn't have to charge your phone every day or multiple times a day
Yeah.
back in the day, because all it's doing is those basic functions, which is definitely cool. But yeah, on the Apple side of things, if they were to make a dumb phone, what would it need? And I think I would still need cameras and then like the other features. But if you're doing all the camera stuff, it's like it has the tech.
That's hard.
So-
the problem is you start building a camera, like what are you gonna do about the screen? Because I think one of the best things about these dumb phone types, things like the light phone, it's not the only one who's done this, but the e-ink display. I think that's where you're saving a ton of battery. Yeah, like a massive amount of battery, like having an e-ink display, right? And it has that kind of more analog feel, in that it's working off reflective light when you're outside instead of emitted light, so you can see it clearly. And if you add a camera onto it, well, maybe you put a camera, but you only see kind of low res versions of the like e-ink
And it's
versions
very
of the
auto.
photos.
Yeah, you're always relying on auto and not.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then it somehow it saves like an actual full color JPEG that you can offload or airdrop, or it sends it to the cloud or something like that. That might be
Yeah.
cool. But again, like that's where say goodbye to the two of the great benefits you just talked about: battery and price. Right? If you
That's
put that
true.
camera in, so yeah.
Yeah, so maybe it's you actually get a camera. You have a camera, and then you have your separate phone, like we used to have.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
probably
Yeah,
what the
yeah, yeah.
idea of the full dumb phone life would actually be.
Or you have a device that's a totally different thing. Like going back to the Vision Pro, whatever kind of the next iteration of this thing is, you have a Apple glasses on that has a camera in it, that has advanced sensors, that's doing all kind of stuff, but it doesn't really let you interact with these kind of time sync apps. So the negative stuff about smartphones, and your phone is a dumb phone kind of device. It just does text, it just makes phone calls. Yeah, that might be cool.
Yeah, I like the idea, but it's like culture is so far down the path of smartphones.
Yeah.
It's really hard to go against it, which has good things and bad things.
If you're gonna be you're gonna be a freak if you have this thing, right? Like people are gonna be like, what?
Yeah.
Like it's like it's second nature to people now. Like, hey, can you take a picture of this thing for me? Hey, Google this thing real quick. Hey, can you pull up the map so we know how to navigate to it? Like it's you just assume everyone around you has this capability, and if all of a sudden you're like, sorry, my phone doesn't actually do that, people are like, what? It's like you've become some weird monk who's like eschewed all modernity. And it's like that's crazy, right? Like so.
Yeah.
And some people would want to be that. It's like the guy's like, oh, well, let me tell you about how I became vegan, kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? It's like, oh, like let me tell you about my dumb phone. You got to try this,
Yeah, and I have total respect for it. I love
cool. Yeah, I'm gonna think that guy is cool, and I would be like, not for me, dude.
Yeah, not for me, but I want to talk to you about how you do it because you're a better person than I am.
Much better.